Hello and welcome one and all to another fabulous star-studded episode of the SuperShow podcast, where this week, let's get it out the way nice and early, Jonesy. Chris has decided to take a knee, so it's just you and I rolling as a duo this time. We've beaten Warzone to the punch.
Indeed, this is the second time it's been just you and I, isn't it?
I know, and last time went okay. I'm going to try my hardest not to fuck it up, but I'm kind of new to the whole hosting thing. There's lots of things you need to say. I've also realised I'm not even keeping time at the moment, so this could be the longest podcast yet, could be the shortest yet. Who knows?
How you doing anyway? You okay?
Do you know what? I'm not too bad. I kind of turned the camera on and the mic on to get ready to record this, and I realised that I am now well on my way in the transition of becoming a hobo. I've got quarantine hair in full effect. I've got quarantine beard in full effect, and trust me, like it's bad down there. You don't need to see that in any more detail than you're currently seeing it. But you know what? I'm alive,
which is something I guess.
That's something a lot of people out there can't say at the moment. Well, they can't say anything because, well, yeah, you know why. How about you, Jonesy?
I'm good. I've just realised, I hope no one can see this on camera. I don't know how good my camera is, but when I breathe out,
yeah,
I can see my breath because I'm in my little makeshift garage studio again, and it's pretty cold today. It was been incredible weather the last couple of weeks, but the last sort of few days have taken a bit of a turn. So yeah, I'm a little bit chilly. I'm not
try not to start like shivering. We don't need your jaw going in the middle of the podcast. It might put people off.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to say something else entirely, like you'd accidentally left a dildo on the shelf behind you or something.
No, I took all the dildos down just especially for this.
You got to keep up appearances for the folks at home. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
well, before we get into your week in gaming, Jonesy, and discuss, of course, all the news that has dropped in the last 7 days, there is a little bit of housekeeping, we need to tend to first of all. And top of that list for me, as always, is our lovely, ever-supporting, ever-generous patrons over on patreon.com/supershow. As always, we need to thank you all so much, whether you donate $1, whether you donate more, whether you've donated in the past, the present, and of course the future. But this week we have to give special shout-outs to our main men, Brett Zerbrick, aka Shellshock, Hacksaw Book Read, Mindful Pig, Peaswad, Tristan Harris, William Sherry, and the Dons, the Don Corleones of the Super Show podcast, if there were any, Lonnie Thompson and Skylar Music. Gents and ladies, thank you all so much for your support.
Thank you, all of you. You're amazing.
Yes, they literally keep the wheels greased that allow us to stay on the road and not skidding off to the side.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's an interesting analogy. They keep the wheels greased to keep us on the road.
Do you know what, Jonesy? I've been writing a novel this week, so I'm thinking in metaphors and similes a lot nowadays, and analogies. Do you know what? Here's one for you. And this is original creation by yours truly. You can borrow it, but you need to credit me. So you know there's an expression, whatever floats your boat.
Yes.
How about this? You don't know what's going to float your boat until you push it out to sea.
Okay. So does that mean until you try it, you don't know?
Yeah, basically. You don't know what's going to float your boat until you've done it. Actually, it's a paraphrase thing that I took from an ex-girlfriend who was trying to
get you to do weird stuff.
Yeah, she was trying to peg me and I wasn't up for it. No, I'm joking. But seriously, any royalties checks that go from anyone else using that in any context whatsoever, please forward them all on to me. I desperately need the money.
You don't know what's going to float your boat until you push it out to sea.
See, now you owe me $2, and that's the way the game goes.
Like it.
Anyway, Josie, what have you been playing this week?
I have mostly been playing some Ring Fit Adventure on the Nintendo Switch. Because I was going to say... You're looking a bit swole. Yeah, cheers, mate. It's actually just the jumper. And the Pop-Tarts I ate just before we came on. No, it's... I managed to get hold of one, which I was surprised at to start. As you know that I actually asked you about borrowing yours from you.
You did, yeah.
But no, I managed to buy one, and I had a go, and genuinely was pretty impressed by how good that is. I kind of thought it might be a little bit Mickey Mouse, but I sort of set it all up. I did everything you need to do because it has like a strength test how strong you are. Asks you to like some stats about you, gets you to run on the spot, blah blah blah. Sort of standard fare for like the like balance board and things like that obviously Nintendo have had in the past. But that ring, that's got some.
It feels thorough, doesn't it?
It is very, very robust in its construction.
Yeah.
What was quite good as well was, so I played it, and then I set my he's almost 4-year-old up on it because he wanted to play. But when he would play it, he couldn't even make it like shoot. So if people haven't seen it, you run around the level by running. You've got one of the Switch controllers strapped to your leg, and then you'll be running around and you have to squeeze in this ring to shoot in front of you, and that might be to shoot boxes to get coins, or it might be to shoot at doors to open them. And he was trying to do that, so he was trying to push it, but it was set up for me, so he couldn't make it do anything because he'd push it and it wouldn't do anything. It would just kind of go Puh. So then we set it up for him, and then he had a fantastic time. So rather than having to do like 17 leg raises in order to take off 20 health from an enemy, he was having to do like 3. So he was getting into it. Like he spent about probably half an hour playing, which at, he's not even 4 yet. He was really into it. I took a couple of videos, and he was full on doing it. He was doing all the actions. He was taking out the enemies. It was really cool to watch, actually.
That's wicked.
But it's also been keeping me fit, which is good. So I think I'm only on like the 3rd world, I believe. So I've played it like 3 times. But no,
so you do feel like you're getting a workout.
You definitely feel like you're getting a workout. You can adjust the difficulty as well. So it's very, and you get, I think you do more damage. So it's kind of like when the actual combat in it is based around the idea that you're running around levels, you jog to proceed along sort of a fixed path. But then when you come upon an enemy, you go into a turn-based, typical kind of turn-based fighting games fare where you can use a move that you want, which has got a certain attacking power. Then once you've attacked them, they attack you. You can block, blah, blah, blah. But the way you do more damage to them is by having better form in the exercises. So if you do a squat, you literally have to squat slowly and deeply, and then it will go, great, you've done 10 damage. But if you do like a bit of a ropey squat, you don't squat low enough, you do it too quickly, you might go, okay, you've done 4 damage. So in order to damage the enemies, you have to do more, which I think is really cool, and I built up a sweat, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. I think that's also why I found it tough, because most of my squats would be described as ropey, and I think my knees buckled after about I'd taken half the health away from the first enemy in the game, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to stick to the upper body.
Right. But then sometimes you can't, because then sometimes it says to you, there's a cooldown on a certain move, and it's like, no, you've got to do some leg raises, and you're like, I don't want to do any leg raises.
To proceed in the kind of the story mode, you very much have to. There's a bit of customization, but you have to more or less do what they want you to do. But what I ended up doing, and I'm curious to see if you get any longevity out of this, maybe once you finish the story, although I've heard it's pretty long, is that you can take the mini games and things like that appear in the story out of the story and basically make your own custom routines and workouts based on the ones you like, how long you want to do them for, how many reps you want to do. And you basically make almost like a playlist of all the things you like to do. And that's kind of cool, because you can basically say, hey, that's where the two kind of lines meet on the graph of a mini game I enjoy and a workout that I want. And you can pick and choose that stuff.
Sure,
so I like that customization, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very good. There's also a mode which is like a rhythm mode, where I think it's actually branches out into other Nintendo franchises, where there's music and there are sort of visualizations from all sorts of different games, and it's almost like what are they called? Like a dance mat kind of thing, where to the beat you have to lean this way and squeeze the ring, and lean this way and pull the ring, and it's nice. It's a really good idea, and I can see why they've been so hard to get hold of, because if you had a go on one, I think you kind of realise that, okay, it might not be as good as going to the gym or doing some cross-country, but it's pretty legit when you're in lockdown.
Well, exactly. Most people can't go to the gym right now, and it is the perfect substitute in many ways. So, yeah, I'm completely with you. I know why they're in high demand. And to anyone thinking about it, if you can get your hands on one for a reasonable price, I think you'll find it's worth it.
That's the one thing that kills me. So I was thinking of buying one from... is it Facebook's marketplace? And there was quite a few people that had them locally to me, and there's a lot of people selling new ones as well. So they'd obviously gone out and bought a couple of them, but they were like 120 quid for just the game.
Yeah. Plus, I know I'm being like prejudiced and everything like that, but I just automatically assume, much like with Craigslist, that if you're going to buy something off Facebook Marketplace, it's going to come to you like covered in semen or pubes or something like that. Like something's going to be wrong with it. I don't know.
Probably. Well, most of the people on there were like, no, this is brand new, unbought, like, it hasn't been opened. But then it kind of made me think, well, then I don't know how I feel about that. Buying things up because they're, people want them and then doubling the price and selling them on, especially for something like that's supposed to get people fit. But one thing I also noticed on the Facebook Marketplace was there was shitloads of adverts for them. So I kind of feel that a lot of people are not buying them because they're saying, I'm not spending 100 and 120 quid on just the game. This hasn't even got the ring in it. Why am I going to do that? But I managed to get one from Argos, so I was very lucky. I kept going on their website every day. I was like, have they got any? And they had one, and I was like, yes, I'm gonna get that and play it. So I think it retails for about £69, something like that, 65, about around that mark.
Yeah.
Which is pretty, it's pretty decent. Like you say, the ring's very robust. There's a full-fledged game in there. There are other little mini games you can play. So no, I think it's cool, man. I'm going to stick with it, see how I get on. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've been playing. But apart from that, I did watch a really shit film, which was Men in Black International.
Oh wow, okay. I missed that one back in the day.
Yeah, I did as well. It was on Sky. It was a premiere on Sky Movies, so I watched it and was not impressed.
Well, go on then. Give us a slightly more detailed review. What didn't you like?
It's hard to say. So it has a kind of a strange thing in that it's trying. A lot of series do this, where they try and recapture some of what people like in the original by in the first one by showing the person becoming an agent. So they did that a bit in this with, I can't remember the actress's name, but she plays the Valkyrie in
Tessa Thompson.
So she kind of is the Will Smith character for this one, and it's how she gets into the Men in Black, but it's rushed and it's kind of sort of a bit hammily done, and it kind of feels pointless. And then they pack her off to London to go and meet up with Liam Hemsworth, who's supposed to be, the sort of, he used to be a great agent and now he's kind of gone off the boil.
Chris Hemsworth.
Sorry, Chris. I always get those two mixed up.
The big one.
Thor.
Thor, yeah. I
think the idea was supposed to be that they've got great chemistry. They've got really good chemistry because of Marvel and that they've worked together, etc. But it was almost like a weird origin story for Tessa Thompson because they don't spend enough time on it, and it's definitely not got the charm of the Will Smith era Men in Black. Then you have the Hemsworth character who they're like, oh, he used to be great and now he's rubbish, but they don't delve into that anywhere near as much as they did with Tommy Lee Jones, and sort of look at his kind of I suppose the fact that he's not what he once was, and the fact that he's fallen out of love with being a Men in Black or a Man in Black. So it's just kind of, and then it goes into full on stupid. So the comedy isn't situational comedy in the sense of, Will Smith's character in it, there is some drama in what he does, and there's some real kind of desire to be the best, and he's sprinting around and he's kind of does the Will Smith thing where he says funny stuff, but it's quite dramatic. It's quite a dramatic film. This is just kind of stupid in most places, which I just didn't really like. I thought there was a lot of, I don't know, there was a lot of like stuff blowing up and flying around and jet bikes that they didn't need. And
I'll be honest, I wasn't particularly enthusiastic about it prior to release, and you're not doing anything to change my mind at the moment.
Man. Watch number 3. Number 3 is good if you haven't seen that.
I know, I remember I saw number 3 in the cinema. And it's interesting you mentioned Will Smith. Like, he's someone I've been thinking about a little bit recently, largely because of the Bad Boys movies.
Right.
And I think something happened around like the mid to late noughties, where he was doing things like I Am Legend and that After Earth or whatever it was called.
Oh, God, yeah.
Where Will Smith movies kind of became Will Smith movies in the same way Tom Cruise movies become Tom Cruise movies. And you're just kind of like, oh yeah, it's that guy. But what's interesting is if you go back to when Will Smith was younger and watch films like Men in Black or Bad Boys, or I guess for some people Fresh Prince, I never watched it, like you realise that actually he was just a fucking like funny, very likeable dude, and he still is in many ways. He just became so famous that everyone just kind of assumed he was weird. I don't know.
Yeah, no, for me, it was Fresh Prince, and then it was kind of his humour and everything that he was in. He had kind of funny little Will Smith quips, and it totally worked with films like Men in Black. And it was, but I don't know. This is, I suppose they're trying to recapture that. This sort of, but Chris
Hemsworth is not Will Smith. and never will be.
Well, he doesn't even want to be, does he? Tessa Thompson wants to be the Will Smith character, I guess, and then Chris Hemsworth's supposed to be this. I feel like with him, they're like, he's so good looking, anything you put him in, he's going to be great. But it's kind of like, I don't think it works like that.
Yeah.
He's good as Thor. He's good as I can't remember anything else he's been in. He's good as other people he's been in other films.
What has Chris Hemsworth been in?
Ghostbusters remake.
Oh shit! Jesus. I never even saw that either. Isn't that weird? I get that sometimes, and that's one of the fascinating things about IMDb is you feel like you're intimately familiar with someone, and you try to find out what you know them from, and you're like, I've seen 2 of their movies. Why do I feel like they're my best friend?
So I've seen him, the Chris Hemsworth. I've seen him in like 10 films, but they're all Marvel. Like, is every film I've seen him in is a Marvel movie, and then you take him out of that, and I can't think of many things he's done.
I can think of a couple now, but they were all either bad or small.
But then the problem is, I suppose, when you're in an ensemble movie, it's really hard to separate out the character or that actor from the others. So then you try and put them in a different movie, and it doesn't, it's not as easy. But I mean, I suppose maybe it's okay for the kids. Maybe that's exactly what they want, but
you'll know soon enough when yours get old enough to watch that shit.
Well, I guess by the time they watch this, they'll think this is old. I'll be like, it came out when you were 3, and they'll go like, yeah, I'm not watching that.
Weird, yeah.
They'll be on Men in Black 10.
That's like a movie that came out in 1976 for you.
Yeah, probably. I wasn't born in 1976.
No,
Ouch.
You were born in 1973, right?
You are.
So when you were 3, it was, yeah.
Wow.
I think my maths is
right. You are outrageous. So anyway.
You're old.
What have you been playing?
What have I been playing? I'm still plodding my way through Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I'm going to save that for next week until Chris is back, because I love those conversations where I get to make what I feel are legitimate criticisms about that game, and Chris gets to wave them away. In fact, that was actually a comment that I picked out from last week's video from our old friend ASB64, arguably comment of the week, if you want that feature to stick around. It was Jamie criticises FF7 Remake. Chris, it's the charm. It basically sums up that entire dynamic.
Yeah.
But in terms of actual new things I've been playing, I have played a couple of hours of Gears Tactics, which is the kind of new entry in the Gears of War saga. Obviously not the mainline series, because it is a tactical shooter kind of thing in the same vein as XCOM. So it's about moving a small group of units around, taking cover and half cover in certain places, using action points and turns to basically take down the Locust. And I think it works in a lot of ways. They borrow loads of ideas from XCOM, but they've also got their own unique spin on things in a few places. There have been opportunities to introduce some of the Gears of War character personality, in the form of, you can still run up on people and chainsaw them and whatnot. It's also just surprisingly detailed, like pretty thick, chunky skill trees for a lot of the characters and lots of customization. The only thing I'm not sure about at the moment is, did you ever play the recent XCOMs, Jonesy?
I didn't play the recent ones, but I did play XCOM back in the day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And do you know what? Loved it, and I've always loved that as an idea, but it was so goddamn hard that I've never delved back into that world.
That's exactly why what I struggled with on the recent XCOMs is that I'm just fucking shit. I don't have the patience for it. But what I was going to say is that, and people who've played XCOM or XCOM 2 will know that between the missions and the operations you're going out on, there's kind of like a meta layer to the game where you're building up a base and adding sort of facilities to your thing and just kind of like progressing outside of the context of the combat. And that gives you something to kind of like grasp onto as you're looking for reasons to keep playing. Gears Tactics doesn't have that. And so between missions, you're just kind of kicked back to a menu where you're choosing your lineup of soldiers and adjusting their loadout slightly. And I worry that that's going to sag a little bit. Is that a good word to use in big video games?
Yeah, no, I think I know what you mean. Yeah, for sure. Like XCOM has got a whole world outside of the combat stuff, and obviously Gears games, that is the game. So I suppose I can see how that works. Yeah. Do they do the research and development kind of side that the XCOM does? No. You're finding crates or caches in the levels, and when you go back, you open them, and they all have a certain rarity. It's basically like a loot box system, except you can't buy them. You find them in game. Right. And they get you parts, like you might get a different barrel for your Lancer, or a different piece of armor which has a different passive perk on it. So there's detail in that sense, but it's not
it's not a game where much happens outside the realms of combat, which, for a game that the IGN reviewer took 35 hours to beat, I worry that's a lot of game. Even for Quarantine, that's a lot of game.
That's interesting to me because I would say that the majority of the difficulty with XCOM was what you were doing outside of fighting, because it was the decisions you were making led to whether or not you'd win or you'd lose. But if this game is effectively random drops tied then to combat, I guess that maybe it's a good way for people to get into that sort of game if they want to play the combat.
Maybe. Because, I think you're right. In the recent XCOMs, I want to say you could get to the point where actually, regardless of how you were performing in combat, you could almost, quote-unquote, lose because you were, strategizing poorly outside of it as well.
So
whereas
that was
this
always...
is very much...
Sorry, that was always my failing, like with XCOM. That's exactly what I did. So the combat stuff was relatively easy, like, especially when you start the early game. But the problem would be that if you weren't strategizing well and you weren't doing your loadouts well, you would get, you'd come across a couple of aliens that were just going to rip you to pieces and they'll take your whole team apart and then you're in real trouble.
And that's the issue with Gears, is that it has a story and cutscenes and characters, which means there are people who can't just die. So they have hero units, and hero unit survival is one of the things you need to ensure to complete missions. So in Gears Tactics, if you fuck up, you don't go back to base with a failed mission, you just restart the mission and try and do it again. So, but I don't mean to sound negative. I think they've done a really smart job. Put it this way, as someone else put it, and I'm going to borrow it because I like it as a comparison, Gears Tactics makes more sense than Halo Wars did. In many respects.
Right, okay. I thought you were going to say, the thing that you were going to say was that you don't know what floats a boat until you push it out into the ocean.
No, because again, every time someone says that out loud, you just said it, they owe me money, and now you owe me $4. And yes, I'm keeping count. So, PayPal me at the end of this.
Will do, mate. What else have you been playing?
The other thing that I was going to talk about, a little bit out of character for me, but I'm going to sort of unashamedly put it all out on display for the world to consume. Actually, it's so out of character for me to the point that when I tried to start a conversation about it in Discord, Mickey J, long-time member of the ATG and now SuperShow community, said that I should blink twice if everything is okay.
I saw that, yeah.
Because I think he presumed I had to have been held hostage or something. But to get to the point, I attended, I guess you'd say, I was present for the Travis Scott live experience in Fortnite that happened in the past week. The astronomical kind of event, I believe it's called. And I don't want to sound hyperbolic, Jonesy, and at the risk of getting slaughtered in the comments, I was blown away.
Do you know what? So I wasn't at the event. I watched it after the fact. And I was genuinely thought that it was very cool. And it made me want to join in for one of the repeat performances. I just couldn't quite be asked to re-download Fortnite and log in again.
Fair enough. But that's also what I feel like is cool about it. And I don't mean this, I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any way, but the idea that this was a live event, and sure, everyone can go and watch replays and whatnot, but the idea that you were there at a certain time, a certain place, and everyone that wasn't there, and anyone that's missed it has missed it. Like, I don't want to sound snobbish about exclusivity and stuff like that, but I don't know. I think it's a cool idea, and I think I underestimated it when they did it a little while ago with the Marshmello concert. And I think, sorry, I was
going to agree with you. Like, I think it's a great idea. I genuinely am slightly sad that I wasn't there to enjoy it.
Yeah. Plus, it helped that I think. I'm not. It's not going to be for everyone, but I like to believe that Travis Scott's music, as far as hip hop goes, at least modern hip hop, is actually pretty catchy, and I think most people will find something to cling on to especially in the range of songs that were played during this experience. And I just thought they were willing to kind of change stuff. They were willing to try stuff, and what they did in terms of breaking the rules of Fortnite, changing the plane so the whole world tilts and you're sliding around, or flipping it upside down so you're literally flying through space with all these amazing visuals going on around you. I just thought it was a really impressive experience, and I will not be underestimating Fortnite again anytime soon, because they genuinely proved me wrong. I had an amazing time. And if you'll indulge me, Jonesy, in a shameless plug, I've got to give a shout out to my buddy Adam, who is the one who got me to tag along for the event, because I wouldn't have done it if he hadn't asked me to jump in it with him. And if anyone wants to see a nice, clean, commentary-less video of what went down, just so you can get an idea of the visuals, he made a video over on his channel, which is PlayStation Grenade. Good way to go and check it out if you want some video to go with this audio, because obviously we're talking about it. I'd do it with my hands, maybe cast shadows on the wall behind me, but it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same. Anyway. That's been
very
my
cool. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out, because I want to see. I saw a bit like on news sites, but I think I saw like a few minutes, but I kind of feel like I wanted to get more of an experience. I want to see more of what actually went on there. So no, that's cool. I will be checking out that after the show.
There you go. That's one view. There we go. Anyway, so I think that about does it for our catch up, Jonesy. Unless there's anything else you want to slink in there.
I was going to say, if this is going to become the shameless plug section, okay, I've got one to shamelessly plug as well.
Do it. Let's hear it.
Give me, okay, you got to give me 1 sec.
Oh wow! For anyone that's listening to the audio podcast, in case I don't cut this out, I might cut this out, but actually, I'm selfish and I'm the only person on mic right now, and I like that, so I'm going to keep it in. Whoa! Jonesy is like standing up over the camera. I think he's trying to get something out from behind his computer.
Right, I started a new thing.
Yes, you did.
On my channel, and this is on Saturday, I do a giveaway, and this is what I gave away last Saturday.
Remember that some people can't see you right now, Jonesy.
Oh, so it's a Lego Millennium Falcon from Star Wars.
Ooh.
I gave that away on my channel, and I'm doing it every week. It's called the Saturday Giveaway. And just before coming on live, I recorded another one to premiere this Saturday. So if anybody wants to check that out, and with the chance to win something, not a Lego Millennium Falcon, something different. SuperShow Jonesy on YouTube.
Yeah.
Check it out.
You and I haven't been able to talk about it yet, but I tuned in, obviously, for the giveaway on Saturday, where you gave away said Millennium Falcon. Obviously, I was not the winner, because I did not guess it in time. But I was genuinely, I thought you did a great job. I thought like the production values and the way you kind of were able to riff and keep the flow going, and the fact that it was a premiere, so that you were able to pre-record it but still get live comments. I thought it all worked out really nicely, Jonesy, I think.
Cheers, dude. Thank you very much. But yeah, if anyone's listening or if anyone's watching and they want to be in with a chance to win something, so I would say it's like a little game, right? So that's what you were alluding to there, Jamie, is that I've got a big box of something, and then you just have to guess what's in the box, and I give clues and chat about it, and then the first person in the live comments to guess what I'm giving away, they win it. And this was a Lego Millennium Falcon,
and I believe you make a video that goes up on the Sunday which confirms the winner. So everyone that takes part and thinks they might have won should check in and actually watch the Sunday video so they know that they won.
Exactly right. That is the announcement on the Sunday. But yes, shameless plug from me over, I promise.
Do you know what? If ever there were a time for shameless plugs, it was now. We're all trying to spread our wings and do different things and make money at the end of the day.
I tell you what survive. I plug the Super Show in my videos as well, because I don't have much content on my channel, so it's a perfect opportunity to say.
Well, you're doing this all on a channel called Super Show Jonesy, so it's like
true.
It would be like if Justin Timberlake left NSYNC and started a solo career as NSYNC Justin. You'd be like, okay, fair enough.
Just NSYNC.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what? He's staying true to his roots. Fair play to him.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of the solo career of Robbie Take That Williams, as he's known professionally.
I am Robbie Take That Williams.
I'm actually glad no one's done that, because it sounds fucking stupid.
It does.
Anyway,
it does.
Shall we get into the news for the week, Jonesy?
Do it. There's a lot of cool news this week, so yeah, let's go for it.
There is a lot of cool news, but this first piece that actually we're going to talk about, arguably one of the biggest pieces of news to drop in the last week, is cool in some respects, but absolutely not cool in others, and there's going to be a range of perspectives. So remember, as you're listening to this or watching this, you should be sounding off in the comments down below if you're on YouTube, or hitting us up on Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, at Super Show Pod, because trust me, if ever there were a talking point, this is one of them, and that is, of course, Jonesy, the fiasco that was The Last of Us 2.
Yes, indeed. Bit of a tragic week they've had.
Yeah, so I guess to roll the clock back a little bit and fill in everyone who's maybe not up to date or in the know. So we reported a few weeks ago, as everyone did, that The Last of Us 2 was delayed, quote-unquote, indefinitely. Essentially, Sony kind of pulled it from sale, pre-orders were refunded, and they didn't give a new release date, and they pointed to, at the time, the pandemic around COVID-19, the coronavirus, as the reason for that. And so we're all kind of left in the dark. Things started to change. Would you say it was about maybe a week ago from the time this was uploaded, Jonesy?
Yeah, it feels like it wasn't long after the last pod that we recorded. So yeah, it must have been about that.
Yeah, leaks basically started appearing online. And when I say leaks, I mean we had full-on captures of gameplay, of cutscenes, you name it, that appeared to be coming from some kind of pre-release build of the game. And when we say they were spoiling shit, we mean like they were spoiling everything, to the point where there were videos of key character moments and even the ending that were surfacing online on YouTube, you name it, it was popping up there. Obviously people ripping it, re-downloading it to make sure that stuff stayed. Some people were watching it and then talking about it. So the internet really became a kind of very scary hotbed for The Last of Us 2 spoilers, and still is in many ways. And so we encourage any of you who care about the story to take care, use Chrome extensions, mute words on Twitter, do anything you need to do to stay away from them. But
I admit at this point that I don't know much about what was leaked, because I didn't want to find out anything, so I have purposefully steered well clear of anything that could even be close to giving me a spoiler for any of this.
Do you know what? That's honestly the best way to go. There was even a point where I contemplated not bringing this news story up, because you don't want to open the door for that stuff, but at the same time, we can't... We're caught between a rock and a hard place, right? We can't claim
it was
to
a massive
cover
news
the
story,
yeah,
for
exactly.
sure. So yeah, it's something you have to talk about.
Yes. I guess the last bit of the actual news story itself, before we get on to discussing it, is that Sony, maybe it was part of their plans all along, maybe it was in a direct kind of retaliation or response to what had happened. Sony have announced a new release date for The Last of Us, which is June 19th. For anyone, of course, who's not keeping track, Ghost of Tsushima was also meant to be coming out in June, so that has also been delayed as a knock-on effect of The Last of Us's fiasco. Tsushima now due out for July 17th. And the last tidbit, which again, take it with a pinch of salt, because I haven't seen anyone outright confirm it. Correct me if you've seen different, Jonesy, but I believe the rumours have allegedly come from a disgruntled employee, let's say.
That's exactly what I'd heard as well. Although I hadn't seen anything which kind of expanded on that, I just heard disgruntled employee, so I don't really know. I don't know if you saw anything about who that could potentially be, but it's a lot of info, and it's a lot of access to have for just a random person. So I don't know how these publication developers work. I don't know if people just have unfettered access to get hold of stuff. I guess in some sense they kind of would, but I don't know the level of the employees. What I'm trying to get at, it seems mad they had this much access to it. I suppose
I agree, but I wonder if that's a problem that was maybe exacerbated by the pandemic and the fact that they almost certainly would have been working from home, and perhaps some people's jobs require them to take builds of the game home so that they can do stuff. He could have been in QA, he could have been in testing, he could have been any number of places really, and required access to maybe even more or less obviously the full version of the game, warts and all, cutscenes and all.
That's a great point. I hadn't even considered that. I was thinking how has this person got all this access? But you're absolutely right. If they get sent it and they've got to take it home for whatever purpose, then they've got a shitload of access right there. Yeah,
it's actually, curiously, it's one of the things I've heard is an issue in Japan. And again, I don't know to what extent this, how deep this goes and what games it's affecting. But in Japan, I think they're a lot more sensitive and a lot more private and a lot more secure about that kind of stuff. And so a lot of companies have policies that basically say, no, we're not going to let employees go home with builds of the game and so on and so forth. And that's actually inhibiting their ability to set up in a work from home scenario, because the Japanese companies are a lot more uptight about it. Obviously, maybe now we're seeing the effects of the slightly more lax attitude comparatively of some American studios or Western studios, however you want to frame it.
Yes, it seems like they were right? The Japanese studios who've said they're not going to do it specifically for this kind of reason, they were right. And this is the other thing, right? I know people are saying that maybe we don't know what happens to this employee, why they've done it, we have no idea. I don't think it matters. I don't think there's anything that you could tell me happened to this employee which would make me say that this was a valid form of kind of getting back at the company. because you've effectively ruined an experience for a shitload of gamers out there who just want to play the game and enjoy it. I absolutely, if you want to do things like when we've in the past had leaks about the practices at companies, and they've talked about crunch, and they've talked about bad operating practices, and they've talked about sort of toxic environments, I think that's something very different. This is out and out like it's almost like cutting off your nose to spite your face, right?
Yes, sure. That's a good way.
Because no, I think we were talking about the other day and we're saying like, no one's hiring this person in the gaming industry ever again if they ever find out who it was. Because
that's true.
What, like, even if you found out that they had a horrendous time, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't think it matters. They've just done something which is out bloody rageous. I would say.
And that was why some of the discord around this whole situation was so strange, because I saw far more people than I expected to see across Twitter, Reddit, wherever you want to go for your news and your conversations, kind of defending this person's actions. And every time someone was out there criticizing this person for what they'd done, that person who'd made that comment would get a lot of responses saying, oh, well, I guess crunch is okay now. I guess mismanagement is okay. Very strange responses. And I just basically, I'm going to have to come out and agree with you. I think there are ways, like, no one should condone poor workplace scenarios, poor management, crunch, like, whatever the situation is. No one should ever condone that. That should always be something we're striving to improve. But there are right and wrong ways to improve those situations. And I know what it's like. We all know what it's like to a certain extent to be in a situation where you feel like your back is against the wall, you can't talk to the people you feel like you need to talk to, and you feel like the revolution you want to kickstart amongst the company you're in seems impossible. But, like, this, like you said, Jonesy, it hurts fans, but also it hurts his co-workers. And we've already had people in the press like Jason Schreier, who obviously have contacts within Naughty Dog, who have come out and said, look, I've spoken to a handful of Naughty Dog employees, and the overwhelming feeling that I'm gathered from them is, fuck, this game that I've spent years of my life working on is spoiled for some people who would have otherwise enjoyed it themselves, because, like, some guy, wasn't happy and decided that this was the way to deal with it, when really there are better ways to deal with it.
I think the one saving grace maybe when these sorts of leaks happen is that in reality the number of people who are going to see the leaks and it is going to be spoiled for is going to be relatively small. People will they just won't see the news and they'll have no idea it even happened. There'll be other people like me who heard about it and then avoided at all cost any sort of spoiler. There'll then be other people who saw it, heard about some of the leaks, but don't really care because they weren't going to play it anyway. So the damage that this person's done is relatively small. But at the same time, if Naughty Dog want to go and pursue sort of legal action to say, hey, we might have a financial knock-on because of this, then so you kind of say, like, why did this person do it in this way? Like you said, if they want to talk about crunch, if they want to talk about toxic working environments, if they want to talk about bad managers, there's so many other ways to go about that. This to me always feels like someone saying, oh, okay, it's a terrible place to work, so go to the newspapers, show them some evidence, and someone saying, well, I don't want to actually do that. I don't want to actually get the evidence because I might be wrong in some sense, or it might not be as bad as I say it is. So in which case, I'm going to be like throw my toys out of the pram, and I'm just going to do something to piss them off, which I don't... we've all been there. We've all had moments when we're really annoyed or angry with something in the workplace or for whatever reason. Like, as editors working on YouTube, we had our own mini version of crunch where we would work very long hours till very late in the day, and you'd kind of go, oh, this is ridiculous. I don't want to be here at 2 a.m. editing a video. But the last thing you're going to do is sort of go into your colleagues and friends' machines, take off half-done edits and just put them out online and go... Right,
exactly, yeah.
It's just, doesn't work.
We experience crunch across projects that would, at most, last a week or two, and also at most be amongst teams of, I don't know, like, at its capacity, 6 people, 8 people. When I start to try and imagine what it would be like to have worked on a game with thousands of people, again, across years, and to see your work handled this way, again, from a creative perspective, I can't imagine how disheartening and saddening that would be, especially considering the amount of people who have been willing to indulge in these spoilers, and just, despite the fact that they are devoid of any context as to what happens in the game or how they might be spread out, how they might play out if you were in the moment, so to speak, a lot of people are just willing to make judgments. And I've seen a lot of people make a lot of comments about how, oh, it's going woke and they've ruined it and it's this, that, and the other. And it's just like, I'm not going to lie, it's gotten to the point on the internet now where when someone complains about something creative, when someone complains about a piece of art because it seems politically charged or because it's woke or it's pushing an SJW agenda and all those words that people say, I literally throw that argument out the window immediately. My brain disregards it because all I see are like fat, sweaty incels like me who are, you know, right-leaning rather than left-leaning, going, oh, there are lesbians in my game. There are lesbians in my game. Get the. And it's like, fucking hell, dude. Like, just get a fucking grip, really.
The problem is, as well, is that you kind of go full circle because I suppose you have those stories anyway in games, right? That people don't like. It just so happens that you can't even include those sorts of stories in games now or in any sort of medium because people will assume it's political. It might not be. It might just be the story that you wanted to tell. But you can never then convince people that it's just the story you wanted to tell and it's not. You're not doing it for any political reason. Like it's.
Yeah.
I think we see that a lot where people get accused of being political and they say, you know, actually it wasn't political. It just so happened that that's how it was interpreted. But I think the like I said, I think the plus for this is that it's not going to hopefully affect too many of the people that will play the game. The negative is that the people that it will affect the least are the people that I imagine the employee was trying to attack, which would be, you know, the owners, the people who own Naughty Dog, the people who make the money from it, because they're not going to have their bottom line affected in one jot by this release. Like you said, the only people that really get affected are going to be the creatives who work at the company and who are going to feel like their work is somehow had something taken away from it by this. So yeah, it sucks, man. But hopefully this person who did the leaking, you know, I don't wish them any ill will or anything silly like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll maybe realise that it was a dumb thing to do and they'll change their ways in the future. And good luck to them. But I don't think this was the correct way to go about this.
No, I agree, and I think that's probably a good point to leave it on because. It's probably sensible and safe not to go any deeper on kind of the story side of things, and I feel like you and I are pretty much in agreement as to the nature of what this individual did and whether or not it was right or wrong or whether or not it will be effective in achieving what they hoped it would achieve. But I guess on the plus side, to leave it on a more positive note, it does have a release date. The Last of Us 2 will be coming out, and hopefully we'll be playing it in around about a month and a half, so, you know, it's something to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't bloody wait.
Me either, mate. And something else that luckily we have to look forward to in closer to about 4 to 5 months' time, so some distance away, but still on the horizon, is, of course, maybe, Jonesy, am I right in saying your most anticipated game of the year?
Yes, it is, Jamie. Well, it will be, but I'm still not absolutely convinced that it's even coming out this year, so I'll put that aside, though.
What are you going to come out with this pessimistic attitude for, Jonesy? How about a little bit of, you know, optimism?
I know. I should be more optimistic, but I've pre-ordered the limited edition. I think it was with this one, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Good. Well, one thing we do know, whether or not the game comes out in time, remains to be seen. But one step, I guess, in the right direction is that the game has been rated by, I believe, Jonesy, the Brazilian ratings board.
Yes, that was where the leak was from, wasn't it? Good old Brazil.
Right. Yes, and someone was able to get a screenshot in time before they removed it and also translate it, although the translation is a little bit rough at times. Unsurprisingly, it got an overall rating of 18+. But the thing about the leak, Jonesy, is we were able to break down some of the things that have been included and how old you have to be, in Brazil at least, to experience said things. And when someone posted a screenshot of that list on Twitter, we did actually get a response from one of the developers over at CD Projekt Red, who said almost, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but it's basically a direct quote, that they are not fucking around.
That was my favourite quote. Right?
Yeah,
from that I've heard from about anything for a long time in video games is like, that's the best answer they could have come up with. Like, so have you got anything to say about it being 18+? Yeah, dude, we ain't fuck. But then if you've seen anything leading up to this point for Cyberpunk 2077. how could it be anything but an 18 plus? Like, you've got stuff pulling eyes out and putting new eyes in, and people shooting each other and dying in cars, and this game's going to be phenomenal.
Shall we have a quick run through of the list then, Jonesy, and see what Cyberpunk 2077 is set to include?
Yes, please, let's do.
Okay, and bear in mind, as I mentioned earlier, some of the translation on this is a little bit ropey from, I'm guessing, Portuguese into English. First of all, there are a few things that the Brazilian regulators think are suitable for literally everyone, including weapons without violence and moderate or hinted use of illicit drugs.
Okay, so the kids are doing it too.
Yeah, apparently if you only hint at the use of illicit drugs, then fucking 4-year-olds are allowed to do it.
So it's a video of a 5-year-old holding a Glock whilst breathing out smoke, but not actually inhaling from a joint. So that,
exactly.
Okay.
To be fair, I've seen some videos, some CCTV videos of shit that goes down in Brazil, and I can believe it. Anyway, let's maybe not get into that. Shit you have to be 10 to experience includes weapon with violence and derogatory language. I guess both to be expected.
Okay.
Do you want to know what you have to be 12 to see in Brazil?
Yeah, go on.
And again, this is where the translation gets a bit weird. Here are some of my favourite ones. Exposure to death corpse, which I guess just means showing a dead body. But I like the expression there. And another one you have to be 12 to experience is sexual pleasurement.
Do you know what? I'm not surprised, because Brazil seems like quite an open country when it comes to like sexy stuff. So I'm not that surprised that they're down for that.
But it's also just like verbal aggression is in the 12-year-old section. And I personally don't put verbal aggression on the same level as sexual pleasurement or exposure to death corpse. But maybe that's just me.
I guess there's degrees though, right? Because that could be like, clean your room or I'll slap you. Or it could be something much worse. So I'm not quite sure where they're coming there. Death corpse is quite bad though. 12 and you can see death corpse is quite bad.
Exactly. I mean, we all saw, was it Stand By Me, where they find the dead body? Or
I've never seen it.
I think they find a dead body in Stand By Me. I don't know. Could be making it up and getting my wires crossed. Anyway, let's rattle through the rest of the list. At 14 plus, we have things such as description of illicit drug consumption or trafficking and sexual exploitation. They then bump it up to 16 plus with things like mutilation and intense sexual relation. And we have the 18 plus category, which is just simply cruelty, which I love the open-endedness of that. You have to be 18 to witness these acts of cruelty.
Johnny Silverhands is one cruel mother. That's why they've had to put the 18 plus.
If I had to guess what that means, there's one thing. Basically, when I was younger, my parents wouldn't let me get games that were rated 18. So I used to take a lot of time to look into what games were being rated and why, which led me to spend a lot of time on the BBFC website. The BBFC being the British Board of Film Classification here in the UK, that also used to handle games before everything went to the European PEGI system. 15s and 18s would still be 15s and 18s in games, as they were in movies.
Right.
And I remember, because I used to read so many descriptions, the thing that they used to use as a defining characteristic of violence and whether or not it would be a 15 or an 18, because there are loads of 15s where you're shooting people and blood's coming out, is if the violence dwells on the infliction of pain and essentially the suffering of the individual who is being hurt, that's when it crossed over into 18 territory. And I wonder if that's what the cruelty refers to.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I suppose that does put it into a slightly different category. It's interesting saying that, because I've kind of in that at the moment where I have to decide if something's okay for my kid to watch, because it's like, and we started watching Jurassic World, and obviously there are dinosaurs in that eat people, but there's no blood. Yeah. I didn't let them watch it anyway. I was like, there's no way he's watching that. But there was no blood. But I suppose that's how I guess they decide is you can have violence but with blood, you can have violence without blood, you can have someone taking pleasure in doing it, you can. So I suppose what we got to look forward to with this game is that people are gonna enjoy inflicting pain and violence on others, and lots of self-pleasuring. So
yeah, and I guess we could have presumed some of that based on what we've seen so far. Can I ask you a question though about what you were just talking about? And this is partly just me projecting because of what my parents did to me and wanting to know what you will do to your kids.
Sure.
How old will your sons have to be before you will let them play a video game that has an 18 on the box?
Probably like 14, 13, something like that.
Okay.
Well, so like it depends on the game.
GTA, for example. GTA.
Yeah, probably I'd say like 14, maybe.
Okay.
I feel like if you can, they need to get to the point where they are, like but then it depends on them, because if they're not mature enough to deal with it, then obviously that age would have to go up. I think I told you guys before, I was on a train a couple of months ago, before all this madness, and a guy on the train was saying that he would let his son play GTA Online when he can prove that he is more mature, but then at the same time, he was having a conversation with someone else, referenced the fact that his son's bedtime is 7 o'clock. So to me, I was like, those two things don't go together. How can your bedtime be 7 o'clock, but you can play GTA Online? Like, no. Come on.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
I think it's interesting because one thing I'll always say for my parents, especially on my mum's side, is they didn't play or understand games. And I think the easiest thing for them was to err on the side of caution and do what technically the government and the video games industry were telling them to do. I just think it's interesting that when we get more and more people like you, Jonesy, who are parents but are obviously still gamers themselves and understand on a case-by-case basis what might and might not be appropriate at what ages, we're going to see those lines blurred, I think.
Oh, for sure, because the thing that makes it a lot harder these days as well is when I was a kid, like until I was, say, like 15, 16 anyway, like the games were nowhere near good enough to represent anything that bad anyway. I remember playing GTA 1 and 2 when I was a kid, so I was probably, say, like in my early teens, but they were top down, and even when you ran someone over, it looked like a smudge of pixelated tomato ketchup. It wasn't as graphic as people have to deal with these days. I think the thing I'll have to deal with is, so having just played Modern Warfare, last year, there's some pretty harrowing stuff in there where you're silently moving through a building trying to decide who to shoot and who not to shoot in a house in Camden, which is...
Yes.
When we were kids, when I was a kid anyway, there was never anything like that you'd have to deal with to that degree. But if you're a parent, mate, you'd have no idea about that sort of stuff if you weren't a gamer.
Not at all.
So I think I'll be better placed to say yes or no, but at the same time, I think it's still going to be very difficult.
So what you're saying basically is the things have changed since when you as a child got a boner playing Beat 'em and Eat 'em on the Atari 2600.
Exactly.
Have you seen Beat 'em and Eat 'em? I only discovered this in the past week. It's a game where you control these two women at the bottom of the screen on the Atari. It's an Atari 2600 game, so imagine it's basically like it's like 8-bit, 16-bit, whatever it was. You scroll them left and right across the bottom of the screen, and there's a guy at the top of the screen standing in a building who's jerking off and coming off the top of the building, and you have to move the women around and catch it in your mouth and eat it.
Do you know what? I'm going to say it now. If I ever do, that's going to be the first game I stream on Twitch. Beat 'em and Eat 'em.
Really? Beat 'em and Eat 'em? Wow. I think you'll find that there's not much to it. When you've seen it for about 30 seconds, you've seen it all.
I'll do a 2-hour live stream of Beat 'em and Eat 'em.
I think just go through the back catalogue of the weird world of Atari 2600 porn, with the exception perhaps of Custer's Revenge, which we shall not talk about why that game is infamous on this podcast, but if you are curious, look up Custer's Revenge and be ready to be shocked. Anyway, Jonesy, let's move on once again to another game that hopefully will be coming out in the future, although its existence technically isn't confirmed yet, so a little bit speculative. We're going to be talking about Horizon Zero Dawn 2.
Yes.
Yeah, so a story broke in the last week or so, courtesy of the writers over at a website called Video Games Chronicle, which I will just sort of drop at the moment, that I hadn't really heard of VGC prior to like a month or two ago, and they have been going hard on the seemingly so far pretty reliable leaks and articles that have been backed up by other journalists and whatnot. They've been talking about...
I think it's one story I think I've heard before that came from them, and it was completely legit, and then a couple of days later it was confirmed, and I was like, okay, fair.
Also,
these guys
recently,
are legit.
They've been sort of on the forefront of, do you remember the whole Resident Evil 8 thing, Village? They were a part of that, and they were also a part of the Mario kind of remasters, the Mario 64 Sunshine Galaxy stuff. They were one of the big sources on that one as well. So they've done an article about Horizon Zero Dawn talking about the plans for the sequel, which I guess isn't really a surprise to anyone, but what might be a surprise is a few of the details, a few of the tidbits they've mentioned for Horizon Zero Dawn 2. To run down a few of those, we've got that they've said that it was originally being planned as a PS4 title, but is now targeting next gen, which I guess anyone could have guessed. It is now April, basically May of 2020. They've said it's going to be gigantic in scope with a larger game world and more freedom than its predecessor. And here's the part that's really interesting, Jonesy. I want to get your take on this as a fan of the original Horizon Zero Dawn. There have been rumours that have pointed to the existence of a co-op mode. At the moment, though, it's not clear if that's going to be delivered via the main story or some kind of a separate mode, whatever that means. Because that was something that was planned in the original, but scrapped as they wouldn't have had time to get it in for the final version. How does that strike you, co-op in Horizon Zero Dawn?
I love the idea of that. I think the co-op sounds perfectly fine. I mean, it's exactly the sort of game that I feel gets enhanced with co-op because it's you versus environment, and it sounds great, and it's a weird and wacky, crazy post-apocalyptic world. I want to shoot dinosaurs in the gut with arrows and with a mate. That'd be great. I'd be all over that, or a few friends. That'd be pretty cool. Maybe you could even have some dinosaurs that you have to work together with other people specifically to take down, which would be very cool.
That's an element I hadn't even thought about, because obviously part of Horizon Zero Dawn was kind of trapping and pinning down these dinosaurs.
Yes.
If they were able to up the scale to the point where this takes multiple people to nail down, that could lead to some pretty almost Monster Hunter-esque long-form encounters.
Yeah, I mean, it even lends itself to things like online raids and stuff, whereby you have to get together with a certain group of people in order to take on, maybe it's a certain number, or maybe it's just gigantic, sort of over-the-top dinosaurs that you'd never be able to take out on your own because they're just too powerful. Which, that to me sounds a lot of fun. I was sort of saying before the pod to you that it kind of bugs me in the sense that I think Guerrilla have said that Horizon is going to be a trilogy, but because we haven't even had the confirmation of the second one yet, it always kind of gets my back up a little bit, because it's like, just concentrate on just confirming the existence of the second one before you start talking about a third, especially when you're in a strange position that I think everybody thought that we'd know exactly what a sequel would well, not exactly, but when it would be coming out, what that would kind of look like, how it would be sort of shaping up by now. But then there was just silence from their end, and we haven't seen much. Right. Which was odd, because it was a very well-received game. It was Sony first party, and it was all seemed to be brilliant. So it always kind of worries me when they start talking about thirds, when you're like, just worry about seconds, and then we'll worry about the rest. The scope thing, this always confuses me. The scope is gigantic. Yeah, the first game was bloody huge. It was plenty big enough. I don't need more bigger world. Just concentrate on making the game. Stop telling me how big it is. It's like some dude who's on Tinder. He's just like constantly telling you, like, dude, stop telling people how big it is. Just, no one cares. Just make sure it's good.
I kind of agree. I don't know why that became the de facto kind of talking point almost for open world games. The thing that they always had to brag about was how big they are, where I feel like we've experienced plenty of times in recent years games that were probably too big and lost out as a result of that. So yeah, I tend to agree.
So it was funny because you had games like Arkham Asylum, and you played them and they were fantastic and incredible and amazing, and then they said there's another one coming out, the world is even bigger, you can go outside the asylum, and you're like, yes, that makes sense, tell me about that. If you're talking about a game like Horizon Zero Dawn, and you say, hey, you know that gigantic world full of many types of people and different environments and all sorts, do you want it bigger? And you're like, well, not really, I had a great time already, thanks. It seems like a needless brag.
Because at some point, for as fascinating as open worlds can be, and for as much as they can be filled with interesting things to do, at some point advertising a bigger open world is basically saying, hey, do you want to take even longer to walk to your next mission?
I've got one for you. Rage 3 comes out and says the world is 10 times the size of Rage 2. You're like, wow, so it's going to have a tenth of the stuff. Well, no, so it's going to have the same amount of stuff, 10 times the world. It's going to be even more desolate. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. It's a strange one.
It is a strange one. But no, hey, look, that game was fantastic. It played really well. I did fall off the story a little toward the end, but the world was incredible. Anyone who hasn't played it, I strongly recommend having a go, because it's a fantastic. It's a fantastic journey. Like, just the leveling and Aloy and the character and the leveling tree and the bow and arrow stuff is wicked. And who does not like going slow motion, sliding under a dinosaur, shooting it in the stomach with a flaming arrow, making it explode, ripping parts of it off? It's phenomenal. But yeah.
You know what, Jonesy? 4 or 5 years ago, I might have identified as someone who didn't know they liked that, but Thanks to Horizon Zero Dawn, I can say with full confidence that I do. One quick question before we move on to the next story. One of the things that I thought was quite satisfying about Horizon Zero Dawn as a game, and kind of an enclosed experience, was that there was a lot of mystery surrounding what had happened to that world, and we won't spoil anything, but how it got to that point and why the world was the way it was. And one of the things I liked about it was they answered those questions for the most part.
Yes.
Do you think a sequel, or two sequels as the case may be, have to find new mysteries to hook people on? Or do you think they can simply say, this is the world and now we're just focusing on stories that happen within it?
So I actually think that they're in quite a good position, I think, for them. If I sort of think back to a lot of sci-fi film franchises, which is where I think would be a good place for them to kind of get a bit of inspiration and obviously other games as well that have done something similar. You've set up the world, you've established how that world existed. You can now go completely from a different perspective, and they could say, right, someone in this world has taken advantage of the world that it exists and they're doing something bad, and now you have to go and stop them. They don't need to go into mystery. They don't need to go into discover something else about the world. They can completely go on a different route, on a different tangent, and just say, because you've established your world. Now you can say, how's somebody using it to for their own reasons, to bad effect, and now you can go over there, and they've made dinosaurs which you've never seen of before. They're 10 times the size of the original dinosaurs. They're more deadly. For sure, you can throw in some little tidbits of, I didn't realise that this existed in the world, but I really don't want them to try and reinvent that world again, because that to me is I don't like it when they do that. It feels like they spend a whole game going, look, you've revealed this, and then in the sequel, if they turn around and go, actually, that was all wrong, it always gets my back up when they do that. I don't know if you're the same, but it kind of annoys you.
Yeah, no, I think there were elements, even within Horizon Zero Dawn, that came close to undermining stuff that they had already done. Because what I liked about it was, again, during the course of the story, you do come to understand that world and the meaning of Zero Dawn, and you get answers to the questions you want answers to. So I'm with you. I don't want them to walk any of that back. And I really hope that they are thinking more about what you're thinking about, which was that you've established this world, you've answered those questions, respect the work you've done before and what you've already told people about that world, and build on it in a way that doesn't betray what you've established.
We would sort of just briefly discussed it before the pod, but there's actually something which I don't want to say, just in case there's anyone out there who hasn't seen it, but at the end of the game, there is a little jumping off point for a sequel. I kind of hope that they wrap that up and don't use that as the jumping off point for the sequel. I'd much rather they developed a whole new story around something completely different. That to me would be. So I've just had quite a cool idea. If they manage to say somebody from the old world managed to survive and you didn't know about it and they've come back somehow, however that is, that would probably be a pretty cool place to get new information, because you obviously have to introduce new characters and things. But yeah, I don't think they need to rewrite anything from the original. Because like you said, it's rare in games that you get closure, because they usually try and keep them open so they can keep making more and more and more entries. So definitely, please don't backtrack now. That would suck.
I agree. Let's hope that they don't do that. We have to keep our faith in Guerrilla. They didn't let us down with Horizon Zero Dawn. They also did a pretty good job of making sure that the last series they worked on, Killzone, did get progressively better game on game, I think, by most accounts. So let's hope that pedigree remains in check as Horizon Zero Dawn continues. And now, Jonesy, if we skip ahead a little bit...
One of the most underrated shooters that ever came out.
You know what?
The Killzone series.
I think committed PS3 owners are always talking about how good Killzone was. And I think especially in the latter days when Resistance, which was Sony's other kind of marquee first-person shooter, had kind of gone off the boil a little bit by comparison, Killzone looked really cool. And as someone who didn't have a PS3 for most of that generation, I always looked at Killzone and thought, man, that looks satisfying and chunky and brutal and heavy and weighty and all those kind of buzzwords, all those adjectives. But I don't know. Maybe it was because I didn't like Shadowfall that much, the one that came out with the launch of the PS4. But something about it, I'm not super interested in that world anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, space Nazis are a difficult one to sort of rehash again and again and again.
I mean, to be fair though, you look at the design and the look of the Helghast, even the name of the Helghast, like that's a pretty iconic group of enemies right there.
Yes, and I think it's the second one, is it, that has Brian Cox as the voice of the main. But I think it's Brian Cox, the main bad guy.
I could believe it. Yeah,
I think it's Brian Cox.
He seems like
an
iconic
kind of evil villain voice as well, which is great.
Yes, gotta love one of those. Anyway, so we're done talking about Horizon Zero Dawn, Jonesy. I think we should maybe, in the interest of time, jump ahead to another upcoming third-person action-adventure game, although this one is a little bit more current in terms of the reason it's in the news, and that is the recently announced game Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yes.
That was my horrible Scandinavian accent for you there. You wouldn't believe my best friend was Norwegian, would you?
But you've probably actually got a pretty good Scandinavian accent, but because everyone does a pretend one all the time, they don't really know what it sounds like.
It is shocking. It is shocking. I realise the only word I can really say in that voice is the name of the town he lives in, and it's a very small town, so I'm just not going to say it just in case.
Dox your mate.
Because that's the thing about Norway, is they're very sparse small towns, so if anyone did ever rock up there in search of my best friend, they'd probably find him, although hopefully no one would ever do that, so, you know. Anyway, so to, I guess, fill in the folks at home, we're actually in a bit of a weird spot where Assassin's Creed Valhalla was formally announced yesterday, following a live stream in which an artist called Boss Logic, whose work is very cool, I recommend you go and check it out if you hadn't heard of him before, was basically, Jonesy, was kind of doing a piece of artwork from the game, almost the key art for the game, live. It was not even time-lapsed, it was actually playing out live in front of us.
Yeah, it was 8.5 hours, I think, roughly, the live stream. Like you said, going from nothing, in pretty Photoshop, I think he was using, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And then, created this sort of key art, which actually I think you were the one who sort of put me onto the fact that there was a lot of stuff revealed, I suppose, in that. It was a very cool piece of artwork, but it did tell us sort of a few things about the game, and there was a lot of little things hidden and some cool little symbols and things.
Yeah. Like, we were noticing at the time, like, for example, that he had the emblem, the logo, whatever you want to call it, for the Order of the Assassins on his axe, which obviously was a confirmation that Assassins will hopefully be a part of the story, as the last two games have kind of fiddled around a little bit with how important the Assassins actually were to the core narrative. We also noticed a couple of other little things, like a raven, for if anyone that's got the image in front of them or can maybe pull it up, there was a raven in the left-hand side of the image, and some other kind of details we're noticing, but
the raven's tied to Odin, isn't it? Like
yes.
Knowledge and Odin's ravens, and so we're getting a little bit of an inkling that there will be some sort of mythology, as well as some out-and-out battling, because you've also got, I think we were saying it looks like it could be English fighters in front of a castle on sort of one side of the image, and then there's Norse boats sort of going through some really rough seas on the other side.
Yeah,
because I read some rumours as well, and hopefully we will find out how true they are, which is that you will be fighting, well, not just fighting, but you'll be sort of spanning, I think it's Denmark, Norway, Sweden, the south of England, in this game.
England, interesting. Was this based on a leak?
Some parts. It was based on, I'm not sure where the leak came from. It was on an article that I read where they sort of were saying that it's it's going to see a lot, but I couldn't find the source, so it could be bullshit.
I might actually put a pin in that for now, because basically to give people a peek behind the curtain, obviously a trailer was announced alongside the reveal that this game was called Assassin's Creed Valhalla, etc. That trailer dropped while we were recording. It was actually about an hour ago at the exact time. And so we had the idea that we were going to watch that trailer and then kind of report back all as part of this podcast to give you our immediate thoughts to it. And I just thought maybe, because before we get too far into, I don't want you kind of talking about the countries it's set in for 10 minutes, and then we watch it and like, oh, well, that was all wrong.
But I wanted to say it first to see if it's true, because that'll give me,
okay.
If I don't, then I'll feel like I was...
okay, so actually, this could be quite funny, because we're going to contradict ourselves in about 3 minutes, but let's get some predictions. So say the countries you think it's going to be set in again.
So the rumours that I read was Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and not the south, but parts of England, so not all of it.
Okay.
I think I'm trying to think if there are many other sort of rumours that were that obvious. I think it was the fact that you're going to see some Norse gods or mythological creatures and things in there. I think the working title was for the game, or the leaked title was Ragnarok, I believe.
I think Ragnarok was speculation. The working title was Kingdoms, I believe.
Oh, Kingdoms, okay. So, and Ragnarok is tied to the serpent and things, which we've obviously already seen in God of War. So there might be a bit of crossover between those two titles. But hey, I'm really psyched for this. I was a bit unsure whether I liked the way they did the reveal, because they did the artwork yesterday. They're doing the trailer today. It feels like a bit of a. I think some of our patrons said it's like a trailer for a trailer for a game that they haven't really even announced. Like, it's a bit weird, but
I get it. It's a pet peeve, but I feel like that's the film and games industry at the moment. It's about kind of waves of anticipation and building up a knowledge base amongst players bit by bit. And I think the fact this is apparently a 4-minute trailer we're about to watch, which is, not insignificant for the first bits of whether it's gameplay, cinematic, whatever it is we're going to see.
What would be the most surprising thing that you could see in the trailer that you'd be like, oh,
the most surprising thing? I would be surprised if we saw anything that looked like legitimate, like raw gameplay at this stage. I think it's going to be largely either a straight up cinematic or in-engine. I would also be surprised if we saw anything that was extremely mythological. Like if we saw fucking Thor coming down from the sky and sending out thunder from his hammer, again, I'd be very surprised if we saw that. At this stage, I think they're just going to flirt with those elements in much the same way they did in Origins Odyssey.
I think you're probably right. There'll be a crack of lightning at some point, but that'll be the extent to which they introduce Thor.
Maybe. We'll see. Should we do it now, Jonesy?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's have a look.
Okay, so I guess I was about to say bear with us, but the folks at home won't even need to bear with us. There will be a 2-second gap, and the next thing you know, just like magic, when I click my fingers, we will have watched that trailer. And just like that, with the power of post-production, we have now watched the debut cinematic trailer for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And I'd like to think, Jonesy, we actually got more or less everything right there.
Yeah, I think we sort of touched on a few things, and a few things we didn't see there, but everything we said, I think, did appear. A bit of Odin and his raven, which you flagged up before.
And again, more alluding to people like Odin and the powers of the gods than outright showing someone, say, wielding Thor's hammer or casting lightning. It seems like they're going to be more of like a background presence that maybe empowers the player character and the Viking forces, that rather than being like, hey, you're a god now.
Yes, yeah, which would have been a bit ridiculous. I liked the fact that it sort of set up with the English king talking about the Yew being godless and barbarians and stuff. I thought it was a very cool sort of setup, juxtaposed with like the village life of a Viking village. I think that was quite cool. Hey, it looks very cool. I mean, cinematic always hard to judge. I guess because they're cinematics.
Maybe a little bit of a cliche to have the voiceover make the English people say like, oh, these barbaric godless Vikings, and it's like, actually no, I'm really nice, look at me, I saved this woman. Like, I actually quite like the idea of the fact that Vikings were just fucking like land raiding pirates who raped and pillaged as they went. I kind of wanted to rape and pillage I wanted to pillage along the way.
Just a bit of pillaging.
Yeah, and the idea is like, no, I'm actually a really good Viking and I care about women and children. Like, no, dude, I'm going to spend the next 60 hours cutting people's heads off. I don't need that.
Maybe you care about Viking women and children, but you just like cutting everyone else's heads off, so that's fine.
Yeah, maybe. And I guess the other thing that we touched on before that we saw full on confirmation of at the very end of the trailer was the presence of the Order of the Assassins, because we saw, of course, Jonesy, the return of the infamous hidden blade.
Schling.
Except this time, interestingly, it was on the top of the forearm, coming over the knuckles, rather than coming out from the underside, which is traditionally why the assassins have had to cut off their ring finger on, I believe, their left hand. So, interesting little tweak on the design there that clearly the Vikings thought of and no one fucking else did.
And also they've got a much cooler way of doing it, that they just punch you in the head and it comes out and stabs you.
Yeah. Because, I guess it's much easier to you can keep a full compact fist with this form of the hidden blade.
No, that looks very cool. I mean, like we said, it's a cinematic, so we can't read too much into it, but I feel like we haven't really learnt much, but it's done exactly what it needed to do. And then confirming that it's going to be out holiday of 2020, which is obviously, not that long away. So I hope we should get some more stuff released between now and then, which should give us a lot better idea of what we're going to see, what we're going to play.
I've actually, again, I could be wrong, but I believe if everything that I've read and heard on the grapevine is true, then actually we're not going to have to wait too long to see a little bit more of this game. Obviously, we know there are going to be a lot of events over the next month or two. I believe Xbox are going to be having some kind of an event pretty soon, perhaps even, as we said last week, on May the 5th. Although that won't be a big blowout event, it will be a slightly smaller, but apparently still quite cool event. And we are still to expect a slightly larger E3 scale event later down the line. Obviously, PlayStation will have to do something at some point. Then you've got IGN and the GameSpots of the world hosting kind of digital streaming events across the summer. So expect to see Assassin's Creed gameplay, I'm going to say, before the summer is out for a release, probably in, let's just say, October or November. And I think it will be a cross-generation game. So Xbox One and PlayStation 4 and Series X and PlayStation 5. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't. Much the same way Black Flag was in 2013.
Yes, yeah. I'm hyped for this. I think they made all the right moves for me for when they went to Odyssey. I wasn't as taken with oh god, what was it called? The Egyptian one. I think
Origins.
I think the steps they made to Odyssey, I liked all of those steps, and it looks. I can't imagine them losing any of the stuff that they progressed to into that. The way that you could effectively be a much more balls out fighter in that game. And I loved all the introduction of the quick moves, like the Spartan kick and stuff like that. I think was pretty wicked.
Oh right, yes, that they kind of went through in Odyssey, which I guess is we kind of talked about off recording as a potential way of like harnessing the more mystical elements and the abilities of the gods and people like Odin without actually having them in the game. Obviously, Assassin's Creed as a series has had the pieces of Eden, which at times have seemed to empower certain people. And I think in Odyssey, you have like the tip of the spear, right? Who belonged to someone important or something.
Leonidas, yeah,
Leonidas
which is obviously from like 300 and the hot gates and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, you have you have the tip of the spear, and you almost do a Shadow of Mordor style, like you can throw the spear into people and you basically teleport to them, and you can throw it into someone else and sort of which gives you sort of ludicrous above human sort of movement speed. There's a few other things thrown in there, but I suppose you could say, oh, he's just throwing a spear at people. But like you said, it's a way of getting those elements into a game without out and out admitting that you're doing it.
And the other thing I think both those games had is that you have Origins and Odyssey, I should clarify, you had an eagle by your side, right? That you would be able to fly over bases and tag enemies. I wonder if perhaps Odin's raven becomes your eagle in this, and that is how Odin is maybe imbuing you with some kind of power. Well, I don't know.
That's a very good point, actually. That's a great point, because that would make complete sense. It would tie into the game. They could say, oh, it's just a raven, but then obviously you know that it's alluding to something else, and then they can always jump in, say, no, it really is Odin, and it can pop out whenever they want.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it now, though. I said this on Discord. I'm going to say it again. The game will finish with you making it to the Americas, because that is a thing that I've heard people talk about before. Like people,
did the Vikings manage that?
Yeah, pretty sure they did. Yeah.
What's the timeline? Okay,
so it's one of those things that's, I think they talk about the first Europeans discovering the Americas as being, like the Christopher Columbus, etc. But then other people said no, the first Europeans to make it to America were actually the Vikings. Because I think they've found longships and stuff in the Americas. But that is my little theory for how this game will end.
It's going to be interesting. We discussed actually prior to recording how little, at least I knew, about the Vikings and where they tended to come from and where they ended up and when. And it was interesting reading about a lot of that stuff. Some of it kind of made sense based on you put bits and pieces together over the years. But broadly speaking, and I know the term Viking is a loose term, and I know they were around for a couple of 100 years, I believe. So there's a lot of ways that this could go, but still it's going to be interesting to see what Ubisoft and the Assassin's Creed series do with all that possibility.
For sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and with that, Jonesy, with that reaction complete and in the books, that probably does it for this episode of the Super Show podcast.
Indeed. Thank you very much for having me here while you did a brilliant job of hosting, Jamie.
I appreciate that, and thank you for being, as ever, a wonderful colour commentator and analyst, and more importantly than any of that, a friend.
Cheers, pal.
Okay, and thank you at home or wherever you are, whether you're sitting around, whether you're going for a walk, maybe you're driving somewhere you're not meant to be driving because...
Is it essential?
Is it essential? Think about it before you travel. Do you really need to make that trip? I don't know. Maybe if you had a podcast to listen to, it may be worth it. But yeah, thank you all for listening, watching, whatever you did. If you are on YouTube, remember you can like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Maybe leave a comment because we do read them. We do respond. We also pick out our favourite comments of the week and feature them in the following episode. So if you want a chance to be featured, then of course get your comments in down below. And if you're listening on an audio platform, maybe it's iTunes, maybe it's Spotify, whatever it is, please do give us a 5-star rating because that shit really helps. It makes us look good when new people find us and they see a 5-star review and they think, well, these guys must be fucking professional. They know exactly what they're doing. When, of course, we all know that we don't. But yes, thanks again, one and all, for watching and listening, whatever you did. And hopefully, we'll see you on the next one. See ya.
See you then.